Hello and welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Anissa Avon, and I am the CEO of Turnkey Coaching and Development Solutions. We are sponsoring a Leading in a Crisis virtual summit, actionable business and HR strategies for navigating crisis and change. And I want to say hello to Ray. Thank you, Ray Weaver, for joining us.
Good morning.
Good morning. And our conversation today could not be more timely or more important. It will be uncomfortable. Conversations required of leaders in a diverse workplace, and we have expert consultant, executive coach, and master trainer Ray Weaver with us. So we're going to jump right in. I do want to say welcome as you join the call. As we begin, if you have questions or input or things that you would like to have addressed today, we would be very open to hearing your thoughts. So use that chat button anytime to share your thoughts and or your questions. So I want to share a little bit about our sponsors. Thank you to David Whitmarsh and the Whitmarsh Consulting Group. David and his team are some super talented multi-channel marketing experts, and we certainly appreciate all that they've done for our group over here, helping us to make the summit a success. Also want to share two of our sponsored programs that are very relevant to what's going on in the workplace and in our world today. The first is simply facilitating anti-racism, facilitated dialogues, and what we're calling dialogue circles in the workplace and in both public and private, as well as other community associations. The focus is simply on having the dialogue, which I think as we move through the conversation today, that's where we all have to begin, is are we having the dialogue? Can we have it in a healthy way? Can we begin to build awareness and educate one another on what needs to be done to collapse systemic racism and live in a truly equitable world? So those dialogues are facilitated by expert facilitators, and the other piece that we have put together are simply taking our diversity and inclusivity programs and dusting them off and making them more relevant for 2020. And those include various formats around building a culture of respect, harassment and inappropriate behaviors, resolving conflicts, including EQ as the path to conflict management and resolving unconscious biases, and of course, valuing differences. So a little bit about me. As I mentioned, I'm the CEO of Turnkey Coaching and Development Solutions. We are a full-service enterprise learning and development organization. And of course, we provide all of the different aspects around coaching and training and development and diversity and inclusivity programs, as well as outplacement. But what I'm most excited to talk to you today about is what our partner and executive coach and trainer, Ray Weaver, is going to bring to the table today. I want to just briefly give you a little bit of background on Ray. He is the CEO of Aboji Coaching and Consulting. He focuses on executive development with his clients, specifically on refining and defining the skills that are required to meet their goals in their personal and professional life. He's an ICF certified professional coach with over 1,900 hours of coaching experience. He's an Everything Disc partner, Gallup Strengths partner, as well as understanding and knowing how to use the MBTI. He's also a leadership circle profile administrator. Love the fact that he's been married for 37 plus years to his best friend. And his clients are from all different sectors, and he has a long and distinguished career in the U.S. military. So, Ray, tell us what I left out here, and share with us what we're going to learn today.
Well, good morning, everyone. I just want to thank everyone first for just inviting me into their homes and to their office spaces, especially for those who are at home right now. And we're in this time that I'm hoping I'll be a honored guest and that I treat you with respect and as you've invited me into your home. So in that, as we go through today, we're just going to have a simple conversation, and I'm going to show you a model called Crucial Conversation Model, but mainly we're just going to go through this in a way of saying, hey, this is just possibly one tool. And this is not going to be all inclusive and say this one tool is going to fix everything, but it may give you a framework or a structure to start having some of the conversations you may desire. So that's what we hope to get out of today.
Perfect. You know, and I know you're going to share your screen with us. And as we begin, the topic, it's going to be uncomfortable, could not, I mean, it describes exactly what most of us in the workplace are experiencing. And those of us who really want to be supportive in the changes that need to take place. And you and I were talking offline before we began. Even those of us who have spent our professional lives developing communication effectiveness skills, conflict management skills, diversity and inclusivity mindsets. I am still finding that I am in the middle of unknown territory. How, you know?
Yeah, and so I just want to think about this in a different way, though. What if that's that uncomfortableness, it helps you better prepare? What if that uncomfortableness is really your body saying, okay, hey, just be aware that this is here. It has the potential to be very powerful, but also has the potential to where it could go the other way if you're not prepared and you're not being aware. So part of a lot of this is we're having to stop and really take a look at what are our emotions are trying to tell us, what is our senses what is our body trying to tell us. So in that's helping develop leaders and their EQ, so to understand the emotional and the things of how their body is responding so they can work on themselves first. And whenever you're learning something new, it's going to be uncomfortable. When something new is thrown at you, it's going to be uncomfortable. And to what we tend to do is we shy away from things that are uncomfortable. But if we do that, we never learn, we never grow, we never develop. So part of this is, are we willing to just put ourselves out there and be vulnerable to say, okay, we don't know. And I may have to research this, and this may be a new learning opportunity for me. So as we start doing that, we can start having these conversations. And I'm hoping that no one ever just gets comfortable with conflict.
Yeah.
If you just get comfortable with it, you may get on automatic again, and then it's going to charge a larger conflict. But what we want to be sure is that you just be aware you're not that you proceed with hesitation, but you proceed. And in that's requiring you to just be present, to be focused, and to really have a define, hey, what do I really want here out of this conversation? What do I really want? And if I'm just here to learn, okay, let me just learn. And also understanding these problems that we're having in the country, that we may have in the workplace, there's some long problems, some systemic problems that we're not going to solve right away. Yeah. And if we go in thinking I have to be an expert on everything, and the psychology and the philosophy that surrounds race or surrounds all these conversations, we're never going to have them. So in that, we're having to realize that, hey, I'm just here to learn, and that's how I grow. That's how I develop. I'm here to take on and understand someone else's perspective that maybe I did not see. Maybe understand also that how they see the world is not how I see the world. And that's kind of stuff we're going to kind of talk about today. And that's much of what's going on is I think America is just growing up, and we're all having to grow up. Well, we're having to get out of our what we call the socialized mind. We're part of this big adult development project where we're getting out of this socialized mind of sitting with a certain group, thinking the same way. And we're starting to realize, hey, wait a minute, for all the complexities that we have, my simplistic view of the world may not be it may be my hindrance to really actually operating in this new way. So I may need some new skills. I may need to develop. I may need to open my mind and my heart to new possibilities and new things that I had never thought so before. And that's scary because it's an uncertainty there. but that's part of the life journey. So,
You know that, and you're probably going to get it into this piece of it. So push pause on my question if we're going to address this a little bit later. One of the pieces that I'm discovering is it's very different having a conversation with with folks who are on that EQ scale, who've done their personal work and who are beginning to recognize, there's some things I don't know, and I'm open to learning. I'd like at some point for us to also talk about there is a gap in some cases that I am observing with people that I care about who, in all sense of the word, will tell you I'm not racist, but dot, 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 right? They don't have that space of I'm willing to learn, because in their mind this issue doesn't, and I'm talking about specifically some white people in my experience that don't believe that this issue applies to them. They're not racist, and then they give you all the reasons, like, you know, their friends and family and, you know, whatever it is. But getting them to a place of perhaps there's something I don't know. I would love to hear your input on how do you nurture a conversation when you can't even get someone to open to this prospect of learning.
Well, I'm just going to throw something out there too. At first, I just want to let people know is that I don't see anybody as broken. I see them whole and complete and doing the best thing they know how to do for what they know how to do.
Yeah.
And also, as we start talking about having conversations, a lot of times what people want is they want to have a conversation and they immediately want someone to shift because they had that conversation.
You bet. You bet.
But what we may have to realize is that what we may be doing is just planting a seed. We may be tilling the soil. So in that, I just want you to be aware of, no one, you can't make anybody change.
Yeah.
And you can't make anybody see something they don't want to see. So much of the time, we may be having arguments or discussions that are really leading nowhere, in the sense that we're talking about family members and things like that. So some things, what I'm learning in my life is that, okay, I planted a seed and I need to learn how to just leave it alone, but still see them as whole and capable in their time and season as they grow and they develop to do that. But that does not mean I have to think that way. And so part of that too, if you go back and you study some work with Keegan and Leahy about the adult development trajectory,
yes.
They sit there and they talk about that in the sense of we hit a point in adults where we're in this socialized mind. And what our socialized mind is, we get our identity from our surroundings. We get our identity from from our work, from our positions, from our titles, from all these other things. And it's like we encase ourselves in that kind of world. And so in that, about 75% of the people stay there. Yeah. And so when that world is being threatened, they fight. Hey, and that's going to happen. But 75% of people, and you can live a very comfortable life right there. And so then few more people start moving where they do that, what you said, that internal work, where now what they're becoming that mind that's more getting out of socialized mind to more of I'm going to just call it a independent thought, that you can be, you're starting to define and you say, I believe, I value, I believe, I feel, I think. These are things that I value, and they may not be in line with the group you grew up in. And so in that, now you're framing yourself to independent in the sense of you're starting to look at, hey, I value this. This is what's important to me. And so you're getting you've done the work where you understand yourself. And so so we'll get maybe 20% of the people who are there. And then you'll move up. And then you'll move up where about 5% of the other people move toward where they're getting to that point where they're interdependent. The first mindset is dependent. The second mindset that we have there is independent. So I'm getting an idea who I am, what I bring, what I value. And then some, they can move into that point where they're interdependent, where they see that, hey, I can hold two different thought processes. I can hold the differences between the two, and I'll take it this way. You'll hit that point where you can say, hey, maybe this person is not a great significant other, husband, spouse, but they are a great parent.
Yeah.
So you can see the independency in that we're not trying to say where we've put a fine line on things where we're starting to say, hey, well, I can see some things here. I can see some good in this, but I can also see where this could go wrong. So it requires us now to move in that. And we're having to go that way as we're dealing with more and more complex things. And the world is getting more complex. And that's really what's really going on right now, is the complexity of the world. It's moving so fast. Everything's moving so fast that we're now in this uncertainty. If we had a fixed mindset, it's going to paralyze us, and we're going to fear it all. So, and that's what happened. And so in that, we're just having to stop as a country, us as human beings, to really kind of do our own work and say, okay, hey, what's really going on with me? How do I really see this? What makes me say this is true? And what makes me say what someone else is telling me is not factual? What makes me say their story, it's their story, it's the story they're telling me, that it's wrong? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But I want them to see things from my perspective as being right, but they haven't had the same experiences I've had. Mm-hmm. So that's where we're going. So.
Love it. And my takeaway on that is absolutely the conversations around fixed versus open mindset.
Yeah.
And that's a good place to start.
Yes. All right. So we're ready to roll?
Yes.
And I have to get you to share your screen. Yeah.
The controls, it's not giving it to you, huh?
Okay. I think it's ready now. Here we go.
Okay,
all
good.
Right. I'm going to go ahead and show this to you. And so in this is, okay, let me step back a little bit here. That's what I want.
There we go.
All right. So I want you, so once again, we're going to have just kind of a conversation. And at the end here, I'm going to introduce you to a little model called the Crucial Conversation Model. And also what we'll do is I'll drop this handout into the, to you, Nessa, and it'll be dropped to your team.
We'll load it up into the portal.
Yes, and that'll be perfect.
Thank you.
And so in that, I just want you to kind of take a look at that picture there. And in this picture here, for those who may just be listening to this, what it is a bunch of people sitting, a bunch of people of different races and cultures and backgrounds standing around this this globe, this picture of the world. In it, they're there and they're looking up, and you can tell by how they're looking at it and why this picture shown is that they're you're seeing a lot of different inputs, a lot of different thoughts, that we all come from different cultures, different backgrounds. So how we see the world, how we see things may just be a little different. So in that, what I want you to do is that we do have to stop a little bit. And before I move into the things on the Crucial Conversation, I just want to get a little clarity. And much of what we're having to do is we're having to step back and really get some clarity on what we're really thinking, what we're really feeling, what we're really seeing here. And so in that, our mental models may not be right now capable of understanding what's really going on. And if we don't stop and we don't take the willing to really listen to each other and really stop and say, okay, how does this really affect me? Why am I really feeling this way? That we may not get the clarity that we need. And the reason being is this. This is from Dr. Frederick Luskin. He's the director of Stanford University Forgiveness Project. He's also the associate professor of Institute of Transpersonal Psychology, and he's the co-chair of the Garden of Forgiveness Project at Ground Zero in Manhattan. And he simply says, I was on a call with him, he said something that really made me really think, and I thought I'd share it with you. When he said, we're not designed to see things clearly. We're not designed to see things clearly. We're designed to keep ourselves safe. So much of what we're doing, we're looking at everything through the lens of safety. So when we're seeing everything going on, we're worried about how is this going to impact me? We go into that egocentric and that sociocentric part of us, and we kind of set rational thinking aside. So when we're not feeling safe, we tend to set rational thinking aside. And we're looking from the egocentric and sociocentric, what am I losing here? And so in that, I just want you to kind of be aware that, once again, we're not designed to see things clearly. We're designed to keep ourselves safe. So much of what we're doing for us to learn and develop, we're pushing against our own selves. We're pushing against our own thought process, our own mind. Okay. And so I want you to understand that struggle we may be having is us. We're adding to the struggle.
You know, and something you said earlier, I want to tie to this, is that seeing people as whole and perfect and doing the very best that they can, given who they are and you know, their life experiences up until now. Yeah. If we can begin to understand this concept, that
Mhm.
those who we may have an opposition with or be in conflict with, particularly during this time of change, if we can understand that even if we don't get it, and even if we don't agree, and even if we think it is morally reprehensible, if we can understand that somewhere deep down they are in a place of fear or in a place of seeking safety. I guess that's
Mhm.
really what this is telling us here, in a
Mhm.
place of how do I self-preserve. Then here's my question: perhaps it's easier to accept people where they are.
And that's where is am I accepting people where they're at, and so in that, I'm not saying that you accept unacceptable behavior.
Yeah.
No one's ever saying that. But what I'm saying, what I'm alluding to, is that some people are where they at, and we have to accept, okay, this is where they're at right now. Now, how can I support them to help them move forward as best as under my control? And at the same time, am I aware of also what my where am I fearing in this, and what is driving this fear, and that's inside of me that makes me respond a certain way. And part of it too is we have to understand too that we're all a product of our own upbringing. So a
Yeah.
lot of times there's things that are deep inside of us that we never thought, that we think we'll say, well, I'm not this, I'm not that. But all of a sudden, when we're faced with a stressful situation, we respond in a way that we never thought we would respond. And we go back to I'm not safe, and I'm going to do everything I can to give myself some control and do everything I can to push away at whatever's going on to me, whatever. And it may be I may come out and I say things that I didn't mean to say, or I say things and I do things that in my mind that this is the right thing to do. But now as I move back and I get the clarity on it, man, that was totally not the right thing to do and the right thing to say. And there may be some consequences that go along with it. And we've been seeing some of that play out.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. But we also understand we're a product of our upbringing. So we may have people that we grew up, and I know how I grew up, and I grew up inner city Detroit, but also prior to that, I actually came from Mobile, Alabama. So I was actually born in Mobile, Alabama, and also and I just was thinking about this today. I'm 58 years old, almost 59 years old. But there was a time when when my mom actually brought us from Detroit on the train coming from Mobile, Alabama to Detroit, Michigan. We had to sit at the back of the train. That's in my lifetime.
Right.
So I
Yeah.
understand. So my experience is gonna color how I see the world and all these other things. And so in that, those things are still there. And that's the same way with the people who were back there, who were empowered at that time. They grew up. It was a different time to grow up. So that's still there. So we may not realize these things may be still playing on us when we don't realize they are. So part of that is we're having to dig in and having to go, okay, why am I feeling this? What story am I telling myself here? Where does that story come from? Why do I respond? Why do I think this way? And so in that, we're having now to stop and look at our own selves. And sometimes we don't want to do that. We still want to look out and say it's someone else's fault.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So as we keep moving on here, and also what I want you to understand is that we live again, and I've said this before, that we live in this VUCA world. And that VUCA world means it's volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. And that volatility is in that volatility, dynamics of change. It's coming very quickly. Things happen overnight that they didn't before. The uncertainty, the prospect for surprise. And that's the thing. A lot of times, a lot of us don't do well in uncertainty. We want the world to be very certain, be very fixed. We want it to be we want to be in control all the time. But when we start realizing on a bigger scale, we really have no control over anything. The only thing we have control over is ourselves. That's it. Whatever events happen, I think one of your other speakers a couple weeks ago spoke on that, is that we have an event. Only thing we can do is respond to shift the outcome. So in that's where we're constantly in this. When things are uncertain, we're having to make sure how we're responding. If we haven't developed and got new skills and really kind of worked through things, we tend to maybe go to automatic. And so part of that is, hey, we having to step back a little bit and really kind of look at what am I really looking at here. And so we'll get into a little bit of that too. Then the complexity, we got a lot of compounding issues that are going on out there. And so in this too is a lot of times what we're looking at, if we think about culture and we think about our organizations, or we think of our country as a big iceberg, a lot of times we're just looking at 10% of the iceberg, and we're looking at events, and we're looking at patterns. But what we're having to do now is we're having to dig down into that other 90%. That includes our mental models. It includes the policies. It includes the power dynamics. It's a lot more going on up under that iceberg. And now people, and all we've been looking at is the 10%. If all we've been looking at is the nature of, oh, we're financially diverse, or in the sense of finances and money, we don't realize that, okay, that may be looking good up here, but there's some other things under there, underlying here, that may be really causing us problems that we haven't looked at. So there's this big complexity of the world now as we move through, that there is no just easy answers. We're understanding we're in this larger system now, that if I do one thing, it may cause something else.
Absolutely.
So, so if you look about different policies that has happened across America, if you go back to early time during the 90s with President Clinton, and he even talks about how when he did the 3 strikes rule, that was probably the worst things he ever done. At the time, it seemed like the right thing to do, and it was a political good thing to do. But now, as he looked at it, they realized what it did to different communities.
Yeah.
And so in that, we don't really think of it. We think we're solving a quick issue, but there's complexities that are going on. When we look at different police departments and how we're run, and how we really kind of almost militarize the police, we're starting to realize, hey, wait a minute. Now we're starting to look like some of the countries that we were totally against, and how they're responding, and we're responding the same way now.
Same way.
And so in that, there was a lot of complexity. When we start building these things, we're having to stop, and we're maybe looking at just the issues going on, and we're trying to put out that fire, but we don't realize by putting out that fire what else it may cause for a long-term systemic problems that we haven't really thought about. So that's part of that complexity in the confounding issues. Also, there's an ambiguity, the potential for misread and to mix meanings and conditions. So we may see the world in a way from our certain perspective. And so we go in from our perspective, but we may not understand the culture, the history, a lot of other things that are going on that we're ambiguous to. So we have those kind of things. So that's that VUCA world. So the big thing about this is all just okay, is that what makes someone successful in a particular role today may not tomorrow. So the question is not whether your organization, employees, and leaders have the right skills, it's whether they have the potential to learn new ones. And that's what we're doing here, is we're having to just learn new things and be open to learning. So we're going to keep moving on. Any questions as I keep?
Yeah. Now, I just wanted to take another layer on this and say that for those of us who are responsible for supporting this dialogue in organizations, or for our HR friends who are charged with leading the conversation or addressing racism and anti-racism in the workplace, simply this concept there's no charge around it. And my perception is that the conversation here about it's whether they have the potential to learn new ones can be the flag in the ground where anyone can start with. That's it. Let's just assume we have something to learn from one another and then go from there.
Yes. And I'll just share some, what I'm coming from this position of ignorance. I know you said expert, but I'm always saying that when I say expert, that means I'm ignorant. And what I mean by that is that from my friends in research, they say what makes a great researcher is someone who's ignorant. In other words, they're always exploring what they don't know. And so in that's where we have a time now we can stop. Yeah, hey, I'm ignorant to this subject. Let me go learn more. Let me develop more. Let me kind of be like that researcher where I'm just out there learning more and growing. And that's what we're having to be now, is because we're having to stop and be that lifelong learner where we're constantly realize, hey, this skill set that may work 5-6 years ago, I may need to come up with a new skill set, constantly grow, constantly develop, where I have a platform to work from, but now I need to grow something on top of that. So that's the thing in this too. Do we have the potential to learn new ones? And that's where we're going. And you'll see a lot of young people are out learning new things, growing new things, having to do that. And sometimes when we're older, we may not realize that, and we are creating our own problems by telling ourselves this is too hard. And we'll get into that. Well, we're having to shift from hard to challenge to being willing to learn.
So this slide and the slide before absolutely allow folks to set a foundation for how to approach this, understanding we all come from a place of desiring safety and security.
Mm-hmm.
And number two, being willing to say, what have I got to learn?
Yeah,
very helpful.
Yes. And so in this shifting perspective, what a lot of times we're having to do is anytime something new comes up, we see it as hard because we see the complexities that are involved in it. And so much of the time what we're doing is, I'll just share this with you. When all this came up, and I was kind of hesitant to have this conversation with you because I was going, wow, man, this is so hard to solve. But then I had to stop and realize, wait a minute. I don't have to solve this problem in the sense of there's a lot of moving pieces, a lot of moving parts. So if I stop and think about, hey, I'm just having a conversation here. So what makes this conversation challenging? So I went from hard to, hey, this is a challenge for me. What makes a challenge? And I was challenged because I said, okay, I'm not an expert on race in the sense that I'm not an expert on the philosophy and the psychology of it. So I said, okay, so what do I need to do? Oh, let me just have a learning conversation. Let me stop and say, okay, I'm just right now learning. And so in that allowed me to start having conversations with certain friends who were calling me and certain leaders. And I was saying, hey, if we shift to I'm having a learning conversation. Let's not try to sit there and think that we're going to solve all the hurt, all the pain, all the past inequities that happened in just one conversation. And a lot of times that's what we tend to do is we think we want to have this one big conversation, and it's not. We're just starting conversations so we can go and have the next conversation. Then we have the next conversation. And then along each conversation, we're doing some action items or whatever that moves us on to the next conversation, that moves us on to the next conversation. So that's how we learn. And it's pretty much what we're planning, we're doing, we're studying it, then we're going back and act. And so in that, we're constantly having to stop. So, okay, we talked about this. Where did that move us? Okay, did that work? Now, what are some of these things that we can tweak? Okay, that's work. And so in that, it is not one conversation is not going to solve all these problems. And because there's multiple conversations that we have to be had, and there's multiple things that we may have to look at. So in that, we're having to stop and learn.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that allows us to shift our perspective is, once again, like you said, hey, what do I need to learn? What can I learn here? Just having the conversation just to learn. So in that, once again, what it requires us to get in from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset. And once again, the growth mindset is life's a journey of learning, therefore. And the fixed mindset is life's a test, try not to look stupid and. Okay.
I've been guilty before.
Okay. Yeah. So what we want to try, the growth mindset accepts uncertainty. The fixed mindsets fear uncertainty. The growth mindset seeks new experiences. The fixed mindsets avoids new experiences. The growth mindsets build a broad repertoire of skills and knowledge, where the fixed mindsets has a narrow repertoire of skills and knowledge. So part of that is understanding, and we're having to grow, we're having to develop, and it's requiring us to have a growth mindset. We don't have to fear the uncertainty. We just have to accept that it's going to be there. There's nothing we can do about it. Us fearing it is not going to change it. It's still going to be uncertain. Yeah. So if I can accept that uncertainty and I stop and accept, okay, it's going to be uncertain. I'm not sure how everything's going to turn out, but I'm sure that one thing I do know is that I'm trusting in my ability just to have a conversation in the sense of to listen and to learn, because that's what's under my control. How are we doing?
This model,
mm-hmm.
I think is helpful.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what you've done so far is outline a methodology, a framework to begin a healthy dialogue, whether that's in a group or one-on-one.
Yes.
But the three pieces that you've set forth, understanding that we're all seeking safety, more than clarity.
Hmm.
This piece right here, moving from a fixed to growth mindset, I think will allow folks to realize, you know what, I do avoid this new experience, or I do have a narrow focus on what my experience has been.
Hmm. And it's just natural when something new comes to you is that it's going to drive a little anxiety. It's going to drive all that. And so in that, that's when you just kind of be aware of that. If you like I was saying, I stopped and I was, man, it's so hard. And that
Yeah.
was just driving the anxiety of me. And then I had to stop and really step back and say, okay, what is making this challenging for me? And for me, it was the challenge of me thinking I had to fix it.
Yeah.
That I had to have all the answers.
That we have to have all the answers.
Yeah. When that's not so, that's how I can be more collaborative because I realize I don't have all the answers. And that allows me now to be interdependent and not just independent. Allows me to be interdependent. Why bring what piece I have? Someone else brings the piece they have, and we try to do the best to collaborate. Where we're doing have a collaborative conversation where we're going, okay, what's really going on here? What am I feeling? What am I thinking? And we share our thoughts. And it's not about I'm right, you're wrong. It's we're just listening right now.
So moving away, and you're probably going to get to this when we get into the crucial conversations piece, but what I'm hearing you say is for an effective evolution in our dialogues and the way that
Mm-hmm.
we co-solve
Mm-hmm.
our systemic racism problem, for example, or our conflict in the workplace around diverse perspectives, isn't about influencing initially necessarily as much as seeking to understand one another's perspective and then working towards a collaborative approach for what change, for growth mindset, for coming together.
Right. How do I know what to fix when I don't know what's going on?
Mm-hmm.
How do I know how to help you when I don't really know what you really need?
And I guess that's it. A lot of folks that we run into, they, there's a lot of assumptions that we do know what racism is. We do know what is the issue at hand here, when in
Mm-hmm.
fact there's a lot of evidence to say that we don't.
We don't. It's a lot of complex
That's
issues,
it.
a lot
The
of things going
complexity.
on, a lot of complexity. That's what I mean when we got back to that VUCA world, volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to say, this is just the way, this is what they need to do. Well, that may work for some. But
That's
what
it.
we have
Yep.
to we have to stop is, and a lot of these things, and you'll hear people say, well, all we need to do is just everybody have a job. And I
Yep.
was with someone, and someone looked at, and it was a gentleman who looked at me, and he was an elderly gentleman. And he looked at, actually, elderly Caucasian gentleman. He looked at me, and he says, "We don't need jobs. People need careers." And I had to stop, and I had to really think about that. And so in that, we're talking. If everybody just get a job, all this goes away. Well, no. All we're doing now is looking at that 10% again, but all the other stuff is still there.
Yeah.
And so we're looking at, if we look at the complexities of what's going on, pandemic and a lot of other things, these ideas of the system that we've set up in America, we're starting to see that, hey, maybe how we've done some things may not be totally healthy to sustain a healthy communities. We just take a look at maybe taking a look at our healthcare system, which is built on a business model.
Yes.
So how does that happen when what happens when you don't have the surgeries and stuff coming in to sustain that business model? And now you're doing a lot of emergency work. It doesn't stand in this new complexity of the world of pandemics and a lot of other things.
That's
And
right.
so we're having to step back and go, wow, we've always talked about no need for a strong government. But when a pandemic hit, things like that, we started to realize, wow, we need strong government.
Yes.
So and there are certain things that only governments can do. Federal governments can do and state governments to do. There's only certain things they can do. So we're having to really step back and say, hey, the fear and the uncertainty is that we're realizing maybe the context on which we built our identity in this new global world, in this new world, it may not be what's something that's going to sustain us. We keep looking at the 10%, but we're not looking at the other 90% of that iceberg that's under the water and going, wait a minute. these policies, these power structures, these mental models that we built of how we thought we were, or what we thought the world should be like, isn't like that anymore. So now it's scary, because that's really requiring us to really look at ourselves in the sense of each individual, of saying, okay, well, wait a minute, this is what I believed, but it doesn't seem to be fitting this new complexity.
Yeah. Yeah.
So a lot of that is all what's going on now.
Very good.
Okay. So in that, what I just want to talk to you about is I'm going to give you just a model called a crucial conversation models. And what I want you to understand, a crucial conversation has three things. It has high stakes, emotions, and differing opinions. Again, high stakes, emotions, and differing opinions. And so on this picture I'm having of this crucial conversation here, you see a bunch of people from all around the world having a huge conversation. So in that, if you think about, if you're bringing a bunch of people together, people have different experiences, have had different opportunities. So how they see the world is going to be different. So in that, when we're having these kind of conversations, we have to be aware that there may be some emotions. There are definitely some high stakes in the sense of relationships that we're talking about. And also there are going to be different opinions, because we see the world differently. And so in that, that's just kind of be aware of that when we talk about these conversations we're having, what we call crucial conversation. And I'm going to be just quickly going over this, this model linearly. Then I'm going to come back later to show you how it fits together. So part of it, what we have here is something that says start with heart. So in that, that's really focusing on what you really want. And that's usually common. I think I've shared this before, but you got to ask yourself, what do I really want for me? What do I want for others? And what do I want for the relationship? And notice I'm not saying from them, for them. What do I want for me? What do I want for others? What do I want for relationships? Then in that, I'm having to ask, how do I need to behave if I really did want what I want? So in that, how do I need to behave to get what I want? And a lot of times I'm matching up my behavior to what I really want. So I want you to just kind of consider that. And also what we want to be really, when we're talking about this principle of starting with heart, we also want to make sure that we're not going to this spot of what we call the suckers or the fool's choice. And what that it looks like is where I'm saying, hey, well, I want to have this conversation with someone, but I don't want to be disrespectful. So now what I've made it a but, instead of now I want to try to make it an and, is what I really want to let go of the fool's choice, where I go, how can I have this conversation and be respectful? So now I can adjust how I'm going to behave, how I'm going to be, to really get this going. The next thing, are we looking and learning? What we're doing, looking for when the conversations become crucial. In other words, when I start seeing emotions, when I start seeing the difference of opinions. Because part is to understand too, is whenever you have a different of opinion, there's a potential that people can get upset. And they're gonna get they're gonna get offended. Have you ever thought about any conversation you have where you were disagreeing with somebody and you didn't agree, where they didn't get offended?
Right.
No?
Had one of those this morning.
No. So part of when we're working through all these things when we're in these kind of conversations, there's a potential for people to get offended, because we're coming from two different views. But if we've done the first part, we started with heart, we can kind of work through that. If I'm first starting to at least trying to get an idea of, hey, am I behaving in a way that I'm showing that I'm trying to learn? So we just kind of need to be aware of that. We're looking for safety problems. Also looking for our own style under stress. And what that's saying is, am I going to silence or violence? So what that means is, are you aware of when you're being stressed and how you show up? Are you this person when you're stressed out, you get very authoritative? Are you a person when you get stressed out that you get very talkative and you hold the whole conversation? Or you're a person who, when you get very stressed out, you just say nothing, you completely just eliminate yourself from the conversation? Or are you the person who when you're under stress, you just give in? So part of that is kind of being aware. Are you looking at yourself to say, okay, how am I showing up here? Am I really staying engaged in this conversation? Then also what we want to be sure too is make sure that we're making it stay safe. And what that means is, for us to have these kind of conversations, we still got to make it safe. Now, that does not mean that it's not going to be contentious. That does not mean that there's not going to be a disagreement. What it just means are we're being open to when it's getting to the point where we're no longer having a conversation that is learning and growing, but one that is where we're just now attacking each other. And I think you'll see a lot of times if you just need to turn on the news and you'll see everybody combating and they're not really having conversation. They just going at each other and nothing's really being said. And so in that, it's just, there's some things here where it says apologize when appropriate, contrast to fix understanding, CRIB, which is a acronym for commit to seek purpose, recognize the purpose behind the strategy, invent mutual purpose, and brainstorm new strategies. But what we're having to watch is the questions we need to be asking ourselves is, why is safety at risk? Have I established a mutual purpose? Am I maintaining mutual respect? And then what will I do to rebuild safety? How can I rebuild safety? So that conversation may have been had, and may be something you need to have. Hey, if it goes to a place you feel unsafe, what are some things that we need to talk about of how can we get safety back? Or stopping them in and go, hey, can we continue to have this conversation? I'm seeing that, hey, this is maybe getting a little bit to the point where I'm feeling uncomfortable, maybe you're feeling uncomfortable. So how can we still have this uncomfortable conversation and still be able to share what needs to be shared? So now you're stopping and you're opening it up to allow people to say, hey, this is what will make me be willing to move on with this conversation, or maybe time, hey, let's kind of take a break here for a minute and step back and then come in. And so in that, it's just a constant thing where we're kind of constantly monitoring things. Then the biggest piece here is mastering your stories. So in that, what's my story? And in that, am I telling myself a victim story, a villain story, a hope? That's just some of the stories, but there may be some other stories you may be telling yourself. And there may be some of these unconscious stories that you don't even, or what we call an automatic thought, that you may not be realizing. But you'll realize sometime what stories you may be telling yourself if you're paying attention to what your body and your emotions are trying to tell you. I may be telling myself some different kind of stories here. And if I don't master my stories, I never respond to what I see or hear. I only respond to what story I tell myself. So if I'm coming into a conversation, I'm just learning, but every time that someone says something, I'm just trying to take their argument or take what they're saying to me apart, I'm not really listening, and so I'm not learning. I see you thinking there, Nessa. What do you got?
A lot. This place around the clever stories, victim, villain, helpless. There is validity in each of those, right? I was talking to a very dear friend who I care greatly for, who I set the tone. I want to have a really real conversation with you. I don't want to offend you. I want to learn. And part of it was the conversation around, I have known him to always not be racist, but some of the things that he's been saying lately, you know, about the rioting and it's the Black Lives Matter movement, and you know, how dare they burn down our house, you know, our stuff, and of course he's seen some of the videos where angry Black people are beating up on white people, and I tried to share with him, yeah, have you seen the angry white people beating up on Black people? So that story doesn't tell us, you know, the greater story. And part of his victim story was valid, right? I've never owned slaves. I was engaged to a Black woman. I am not racist. Why am I at fault, right? And that's valid. So in this conversation, though, where do you go from there to support movement into the dialogue, into the next place of number 3, making it safe to have a deeper conversation?
Well, we're going to get there. Remember, I'm just showing this linearly.
Okay, good. I'm ready to get there.
Okay. All right. So I'm glad you're asking these questions, because I want you to see now in that I want you to consider that person you're talking about, or that person is talking about. what story is that person telling about that other person? And how would they be different without that story? How would they respond differently without that story? So in that, what we've seen is we now maybe start seeing some things that we did not want to see before.
Yes.
Okay. And that now that we see this, we got to ask ourselves, what do we want to do with this?
Okay.
Does that make sense?
It does.
And so that's we've told ourselves, we may have had, sometimes we've had some cognitive dissonance where we just told ourselves the story so we can just stay in it, or stay in a relationship, stay here. But as we start really digging deeper, we start realizing, hey, wait a minute. There's things that I'm seeing here that I just ignored that's always been there. Because it didn't affect me, I didn't pay much attention to it.
Yes.
Because remember when I said we'll go back to that egocentric and social centric. Hey, to stay with this person, I just ignore that. Okay. To stay part of this team.
Yes,
No,
that's right. That is right.
yeah, but as you hit a point where you now getting independent thought, where you're going, hey, this is what I value, and there's a line now that I'm not going to deal with. And so now you're having to decide, okay, how do I have this conversation, but it may be time for me to move on. Does that make sense?
It does.
Yeah. So these are a lot of big, when you're saying these things, there's a lot of complex issues that are going on that I'm sensing and hearing here. So I just throw it out there to you. And so in this, remember I told you this is just one tool. And what people are always looking for, they're looking for one tool that's going to fix everything. And
well, yes. Can you just give us the magic button, please?
There is no magic button, and that's
what?
That's the thing where well, that's what makes life challenging. Okay. But it's in that it's, hey, you understanding that, hey, it's a constant development, it's a constant growth, and that there is not one tool that's going to fix everything. And so in that, what we're trying to do is we're trying to find one magic pill that fixes everything. And it doesn't work that way.
It doesn't exist.
It
Something
doesn't
that
exist.
you said previously in our dialogues was also there is no one solution. No. And there is there's no way to get to the other side of this without walking the path to the other side. Yes. We cannot jump this Grand Canyon. Can't do it.
And that's where life's a journey. Huh. It's a journey. That's why it's about a growth mindset. Is okay. I'm currently, because I can just tell you now, there are things as all this is and I'm unpacking it too. There are certain things I'm having to think about. Go, ooh, man, did I say that? And I think about the 80s and 90s and all the other things I've done, and I cringe. And I just go, man, I'm glad there was no YouTube back then. And so in that, I'm just stopping and I'm having to really sit there and think about, okay, who do I really want to be? And have I really developed into what's needed here? And where have I faltered? And where have I just accepted the social norms just to fit in?
This concept that you're showing us, is this something that leaders can adopt, i.e. modeling the way in order to pave the way for healthier dialogues on their team and in their organization?
Yes, but this is just one other tool. And what I was we'll show as we move on how this tool, when I put it all together, you'll see, and I'll show you, it's going to be a visual representation of how this looks. But I have to just show linearly, just kind of get through it, and then we'll go back to that. Okay, so in there is just master your stories, that's there. Then state your path, explore other paths, and then move to action. A lot of times what we're trying to do is we want to have a conversation, move to action. And so there may be some action, that action may just be, hey, let's have another conversation. But we're talking about state your path, where you're sharing your facts, telling your story, asking the other's path, talking tentatively, encourage testing. So in that piece, that's, am I really open to others' views? Am I really talking about real issues? Am I confidently expressing my own views? And then we want to explore the other's paths, where we're doing an acronym called ask, mirror, paraphrase, prime. Sometimes we have to prime the conversation. then we're agreeing, we're building, and then we're comparing. So there's some things we can agree, there's some things we can build on, and there's maybe some things that we need to compare that, hey, maybe we need to work through because it's a value I have or maybe different than yours. So there's some things that are there. So am I actively exploring others' views? Am I avoiding unnecessary disagreements? Sometimes what we do is we just want to find something to disagree with somebody. And so in that, you'll see sometimes people ask questions. They'll ask a question so they can verify how they see the world. So am I avoiding unnecessary disagreements? There are certain things that we're not going to solve right now. And we're just sitting there and we're disagreeing about things that, okay, if I stop, it's okay, what can we agree on? What can we build on? And then as we both learn, develop, and as we open our minds to other things, we possibly could see a different world. And then we can move to action, decide how we would decide, document decisions, and follow on. And and that's usually a normal thing anybody does after any conversation, kind of wrap things up. So in that, I want to just show you what it looks like. This is what we're trying to get to. If you look at how it was linear the way it's shown, but look at what you do before. You work on you first. So getting unstuck, starting with heart, and mastering your stories. So part of that is the big development before we can have these conversations is working on us first. What do I need to get unstuck from? You know, my emotions, my feelings, my whatever is going on here. I need to be kind of explore that a little bit here. So I'm willing to have these conversations. And also then I start with heart. What do I want for me in this conversation? What do I want for the other? What do I want for the relationship? How do I need to behave to get what I want? And then mastering my stories. What story have I been telling myself about that person sitting across from me? Have I been telling myself they're lazy, they're this, they're that? Or have I been telling myself that, hey, they're all this way? And that's just, you know, so we all got these stories that we're telling ourselves. And some of these stories come from our upbringing. And we don't realize how they become part of our automatic thoughts. But if we never explore those stories of why we respond or why we think this, we'll never get to it. What you're thinking now? I'm listening.
Oh goodness. Well, the pool of shared meaning.
Yes.
I think we all want to jump in that pool too quickly,
Yes.
frankly. And instead of on the previous screen, it was seeking to explore others' perspectives is very different from seeking to influence someone to think the way I think, and seeking to, as you mentioned, lead them with a leading question as opposed to exploring their perspectives. And when and this is I'm looking for confirmation. What I want to take away is how do I use this in dialogues, and how do I support our clients in having these healthy dialogues in real time with so many emotions that are so raw and polarized conversations that are happening. And this pool of shared meaning seems to me that if we jump into, well, this is just the way we need to think as an organization, we will not tolerate racism, therefore, you will be punished. I think that, ultimately that's the right decision. And yet if we jump too quickly into that, how does that polarize people, and how do we use this model to move more healthfully in the right direction?
Well, notice this model is just having conversations.
Yeah.
So conversations will help you move into the right direction.
Healthy conversations and conversations.
Well, and so in that, when we're talking conversations, we're talking healthy conversations. So in that, even if and I want to ask you something, what makes a conversation unhealthy?
Unhealthy? Well, when I want to pick up something and hurt them with it.
Okay, well, and so in that,
that's the violence place.
Yeah, see that now. Notice what's around. If you look at the pool of shared meaning, we have safety, and what's around in the red, silence or violence. So in that, now am I realizing if I'm saying, hey, I want to pick something up and hit someone on the head?
Seriously.
Yeah. Okay. So, but notice what it does. It goes back to the beginning again. Work on you first.
Yeah. So when it's red, I find myself saying, I have nothing to say to you, or come here so that I can hurt you. Either one of those, I have to go back to, wow, it kind of starts with me.
Yeah, well, that's the part. Are you willing to listen? And so in that, And so in this, I want people to stop. And sometimes we have to understand this tool is have conversation. This is not the tool to have when we're possibly having a conversation on performance, when we're trying to get someone to do something. So in that, what we tend to do is we're trying to mix everything together. When we're having to stop is that what's the context of what we're trying to do here? And the context of what we're talking about here is just having conversation.
Have you found that you've been able to simply present this model, have a conversation around the model, and then support people that they're, some of us are never going to be experts on the model, but can this model alone support a foundation upon which to begin having healthier, safer conversations that will help an organization grow?
Yes, if you practice at it. And what people tend to do, again, they're looking for one magic pill that's going to solve all their ills and make them an expert right away. And so if you think, or have the wisdom right away. So as you and I have spoke before, people always trying to get the wisdom. But this is just knowledge I'm giving you. All these seminars are just knowledge. All these webinars are just knowledge. What you have to do is take the tools that's presented to you and put them into application. And that's how you grow the wisdom. So the road from knowledge to wisdom is paved with application. And many of us don't want to do the work.
The work is hard.
The work is challenging.
Yeah.
And the struggle is real because a lot of the struggle is us.
Yeah.
We want everyone else just to change. We just want everybody. We want the world to be this loving, perfect, loving place. But the world has never been that. The world is what it is. It's chaotic. It's VUCA. It's what it is.
How do you feel? I've interrupted you so many times. How do you feel about us having, and I know that we're wrapping up, but I would love us to end with, applying this to a real conversation that folks are going to see in the workplace. Mm-hmm. Do we have enough time to kind of dive into something that could be dangerous?
Well, I want you to just think about, you and I have been having a conversation.
Yeah.
Because before we came, when you and I first when we came on, we just talked about, hey, what are we trying to do here? So now what do I want for me? What do you want? What do we want for others? What do we want for relationships? Now, how do we need to behave? So in that, it's just preparing ourselves to be able to have these conversations. And so in that, if you think about, anyone can actually do have these kind of conversation if they've ever been in a meeting where they just had to talk to someone, a significant other or children, about things that is just uncomfortable to talk about. So they had to decide, what do I really want to talk about? What do I really want to have? If they don't do that, it easily sees that the conversation goes south.
Yes. Yes. Well, and that's where it becomes, it's difficult to use a model, that we haven't practiced, on supercharged, polarizing perspectives.
Right.
So perfect example of that is the call to defund police, right? Mm-hmm. Not everyone of each race agrees or disagrees, right? Mm-hmm. So it's polarizing beyond color of our skin. Mm-hmm. How in an organization might an organization use this model to just, I don't know, have that conversation?
Well, let's stop here.
Yeah.
What's the purpose of having that conversation? What do you really want?
To understand, if I'm using the model,
yeah, I said, what do I really want?
I want to understand.
That's what you want for you.
Okay.
So what do you want for others that are in this conversation?
So if I go back to the model, because that's what I want to learn, right? So if my first is, I want to understand their perspective. What do I want for them?
Yeah, what I want for them, not from them, for them.
For them. What do I want for them? I want them to feel heard. If their opinion is different than mine, then I want to make sure they feel heard by me.
Mm-hmm. So you want them to feel heard. So what do you want for the relationships?
Hey, this is kind of good stuff. I'm liking it. What do I want for the relationship? I want to understand. I want them to know that I care, and for the relationship to be more solid on the other side of this conversation than when it started.
Okay. So in that so I'm hearing a lot of just being able to be open to hold different ideas, but still understand that we still value each other and respect
Yes,
each other. Yeah.
yes.
So now, how do you need to behave to get what you want?
Gosh, I'll have to be
Hmm.
open
Mm-hmm.
the dialogue. I will have to be unopinionated, at
Mm-hmm.
least initially,
Uh-huh.
if not indefinitely.
Mm-hmm.
I will need to hold a safe space of genuine desire to understand.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Now I'm going to ask you this question. What do you need to get unstuck from to be able to do that?
Hmm. I, I'm right, of course. My perspective is right. So that means I'm going to have to let go of my need to be right. If I really want to understand, then it's going to be important for me to let go of my survival mechanism of I must be right here.
But you told me the intent of the conversation was just to explore and to learn, not to prove that you're right.
Well, you asked her, how do I get unstuck?
Yeah. So in that's what I'm saying. So notice that's what I'm going at. Notice how
Yeah,
we're having to work on ourselves first, and also
yeah,
notice too that you mentioned something in there that how can I have a kind of and I'm kind of paraphrasing it. How can I
right,
have
right.
this? How can I want to talk to them about this, even though they may be wrong?
Yeah, yeah. Even though they're very, very wrong, I
Okay.
want to
So
understand.
what if I kind of unstick that from going, okay, this isn't about wrong or right. I'm just trying to understand.
Understand. Exploring other people's perspectives is what
And
we
so
had
so
earlier.
part of that too is understanding too that part of being aware of what our emotions and how we're responding and how we're showing up, and that's also getting unstuck from our triggers.
Yes, it is.
And so in that too, I want you to, I'm having to step back, and I'll just throw this out to you, is when I heard the defund the police, I can just tell you when I heard that, immediately I went to a fear of going, okay, well, what if they defund the police, ain't gonna be enough police around. Now somebody come knock on my door in the middle of the night, I open the door, somebody trying to rob me. What do I do? Who do I call?
Right.
Notice how I went there very quickly.
Yep.
But then I stopped and I says, well, maybe what they're saying is not what I'm saying, I'm thinking they're saying.
That's right.
I'm giving a definition to these words that may not be there. So when I step back and hear defund police, I start hearing someone said it and they said the right way is that what we're talking about defund the police is along the lines of what the Dallas, it was a police chief of the Dallas police, of the police department said, where he said, we're expecting too much from police.
Yes.
They're being counselors, they're being this, they're being that. And so that is what they're actually saying. It's not get rid of police. It's what are we using police for? And maybe we need to take some of these dollars that we put into them to make them this one-all cure-all
Hmm.
that we may need to look at, that we need to get other services. So maybe other teams of people can go all out depending on what the call is.
Yeah.
Well, that is not now the police's responsibility. They have some other responsibility that we can actually create what they were really created for.
So in what we're doing here
Mm-hmm.
is simply not simply. Forgive
Right.
me. This is not
Right.
simple.
Right.
um, but demonstrating what it looks like to follow a framework of healthy dialogue framework to
Right.
have meaningful discussions around
Right.
very polarizing and passionate
Yeah.
perspectives
Yeah.
on racism and our situation at hand.
Right. And so that's right now we're just talking about racism. We're talking about those kind of things, but I want you to understand this model can also be used in other areas of our lives.
Yeah.
There's a lot of uncomfortable conversations, but what we have to do first, again, is work on ourselves first to say, well, what makes this uncomfortable to me?
Well,
And
if we
go ahead.
look at how you did that, is you simply became a coach
Mm-hmm.
and took me in the conversation to what do you want for them, what do you
Yeah.
want for yourself, what do you want for them, what do you want for the relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Those three things in and of itself leaders can do. Just those three things are enough to set the tone for a healthier dialogue.
Yes. And in that, and then notice during it, we got this shared pool of meaning. And we want that shared pool of meaning. That's really shared pool of understanding.
Yeah.
We want that to be deep. We don't want that to be in the drought. So in that, we want, as we make that shared pool of meaning and that safety wider, it makes the silence, it makes the silence and violence smaller. But if the silence and violence are getting greater, the pool of shared meaning, the pool of shared understanding goes into drop. And if I automatically walk in, I'm right, you're wrong, I'm going to sit here and pretend like I'm listening, but when I walk out, that's just the way, you know. So in that, we're having to stop. And that's not to saying that I'm going to change right away just by listening to you. I get a new perspective. Now I got to ask myself, what am I going to do with it? Now that I got this new perspective, it's going to be challenging for me because it's going to be pushing against my socialized mind. It's going to be pushing against my external idea of wanting to be accepted. It's going to be pushing against a lot of things.
That's a true statement.
Mm-hmm.
Ray, can you share with folks how they can get a hold of you, and your last minute, you know, takeaways that you'd like for folks?
There you go.
There it is. Hey!
First on the crucial conversation, in that crucial conversation bit, you'll see it there where it says crucial conversations will have emotions, differing opinions, and high stakes. And what I just encourage people, always work on you first. If you want to do anything in a model, work on you first. Then this is a quote by Maya Angelou, said it best: once you know better, you can do better.
Yeah.
Once you know better, you can do better. And that's actually the growth mindset.
That it is.
And then I just encourage you, people, be open to learning. It will allow you to better navigate this VUCA world, or what we call the new normal, and the uncertainties in life. Is that we're constantly having to develop, we're constantly having to learn. And as we go into it with a research mindset or mindset of, hey, this is something new to me, it's all uncertain. So let me just listen and let me learn a little bit. And before I just start acting, because I may not be getting the whole story. I'm seeing the views through my perspective, and I may not understand the whole story. And so in that, when you think about, we were talking about that iceberg, we keep looking at the patterns, or we keep looking at the events, but we never get down to the why. And so in that, to be able to navigate through the uncertainties, we have to be willing to listen so we understand the why people respond the way they respond.
Thank you, Ray. Thank you so much. This has been really helpful. And thank you, everyone on the call. Ray, share with us how we can get a hold of you.
I keep forgetting to put that in the slide, but
oh, you know what? I'm going to show mine then.
Yeah, go ahead and show yours.
I have your contact information.
Okay.
rweaver@abojicoaching.com or 707-410-8278. And share just a little bit about the kinds of work that you do, or that would be beneficial to organizations.
Well, what I've done is I kind of shifted a little bit more to be more toward nonprofits and governmental organizations, those who are trying to make changes in our community. So I do a lot of strategic facilitation. I do, of course, training and development, and I do a lot of coaching. And so that's what I really do, and that's where my sweet spot is, in the sense of me helping nonprofits who want to change their community, nonprofits and governments who want to, who are about the heart of helping communities be better. And that's where I focus. Really, is where I focus. That's where my heart's at, about the interdependency that we have in community. And so in that, when I'm talking to nonprofits, I always have them remind them that business is a collaborative partner. Businesses are collaborative partners, and we have to kind of be aware of that, because we're all in this together, and businesses need it to help people bring in, have jobs and careers, and have money to sustain themselves. And at the same time, I'm always having to remind businesses that governments are collaborative partners, because they keep the streets, the electric, the things on that allow you to move goods back and forth, they give you the structure, so everybody's have the fair playing field. So those are the kind of things where that's why I work with a lot of nonprofits and
collaboration.
Governments. Yes,
like
yes.
What we're doing.
Mm-hmm. I'm just kind of a peacemaker at heart, so.
I love it. Well, thank you so much, Ray. And thank you folks for joining us. Do let us know how we may further support you. And if you have any further questions, we'll be sure to get to those. So be safe and healthy, and we'll see you again, Ray.
All right, thank you. Have a good day now.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.